Welcome to Dave and Dharm Demystify, a Fintech Futures podcast, helping make sense of the world of fintech and digital finance. Please sit back and listen as the two Ds take a subject and discuss it to make it clearer and easier to understand.
Demystifying.
Welcome everybody to the Dave and Dharm Demystify show, and this week we're going to demystify the future of money, and who better to do that than Ronit Ghose himself. Welcome, Ronit. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here on a nice sunny day in Dubai. Those never happen, right?
I feel like I know you from later, but for our audience, can you just give us a bit of background about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Ronit. I run a think tank for a bank called Citi, called Future of Finance. And with their blessing, I sit on a bunch of advisory boards, mainly my friends who've got startups, VCs, here in Dubai, back in London, where I've grown up and spent most of my career, in South Africa, privileged to be part of one of the early stage VCs there that invests across the whole continent, all 54 countries and other territories. Here in Dubai, I was co-founder last year of call it a Web3 emerging tech VC, and there are others. So I'm privileged to be an observer and a participant in this emerging wave of new finance and technology changing finance. And I'm doing it all out of Dubai, though I seem to spend most of my time on a plane.
Well, I mean, we're in this plush hotel in Dubai.
It's not too shabby, is it? It's not too shabby at all. We're on the 25th floor. There's a very large lobby here. On the other side, there's a beautiful view of the Dubai skyline looking towards DIFC and downtown Dubai, none of which existed when I first began visiting Dubai on holiday. Like many people from the UK, I would come in the mid-2000s with my wife, and at the time, I think we had two kids at the time. No, one first, and then the second one arrived. And none of this existed. It's amazing the transformation that Dubai has built over the last 15, 20 years.
I have to say that I've spent a fair amount of time going to kind of fintech conferences, speaking at some of them, etc. in the UK. But I'm starting to get a bit depressed because when I come here, the energy and the passion, the progress here, the support from the regulators, the smart money from the investors, the government kind of investment into technology itself, it's all so exciting. And whenever I speak to somebody, especially in government, I mean, you never imagine really a politician understanding very much about technology, but here it's totally different. I mean, if
totally.
Dave and I both said if we were 30 years younger, we'd be doing startups here again.
30 years young. Come on, there's no time like the current time, guys. Come on.
That's what right?
No time like the current time. No, we were having this discussion just yesterday morning. So obviously we're all here. There's lots of conferences happening in Dubai this week. And the core conference is this GITEX conference. I think it's in its 30th year or something. They claim they're the world's largest tech and startup conference. And we were in a closed-door meeting with some very senior government officials. Can't mention who, but I am going to name drop, though, that one, and I'm sure he won't mind me, on the entrepreneur and banker side of the table was the founder of Paytm, Shekhar Sharma, who I write about in my book. So I'm sure he won't mind me name dropping him, because we say in the book he's like the complete rock star of Indian finance, fintech, particularly when he set up Paytm about a decade ago. And Vijay, me, the CEO of a big payment company here, we all walked out and we said, wow, that was a really interesting meeting. And Vijay said, that doesn't happen in many countries when you meet policymakers who speak and think like that. And I said to him, you know, the framework that's often talked about in the founder mode versus the manager mode. And that's got relevance here because in most countries, government officials, central bank officials, bureaucrats, somewhat like senior bankers. And I don't mean this disrespectfully. They have a different job to do. If you're a senior banker or a government official or the central bank in a big job, your job is to keep the show on the road. It's literally to keep the wheels turning, to keep the machine going. And keeping that machine going is really hard. To use the airplane analogy, you're flying. It's an A380, and you got to keep it flying. Now, you got all kinds of cool technology, but you still need someone at the proverbial wheel, and that's their job. Founders have a different job. Startup founders have a different job, and entrepreneurs have a different job. That's the classic 0 to 1 job, right? Is to think up the plane, build the plane, get the plane off the ground. And they're often not very good at keeping it running. And what's I think unique about the UAE, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and there are some other places like this is the policy officials and senior government officials think like founders. Because literally, this country is, I don't want to guess your age, guys, but I think your ballpark, we're all the same age. This country is our age. Damn, I think I just gave away our age.
30 years old. God.
I know. We're 25, right? So this country is about our age. The dirham, the currency, the country, and me, we're all about the same age. The leadership of this country, oftentimes you meet, they're younger than me, but they think like founders. And that's unique or very unusual. And that's what makes it a special place.
You know, we obviously want to talk about your book, which is about the future of money. But just sort of touching on that, you kind of alluded to how quickly Dubai has been built. I mean, physically, but it's also been built very quickly, kind of digitally as well. And somewhere in the last few years, something has kind of happened, which has sort of triggered an exponential explosion.
Yeah, a takeoff.
And is that COVID? Was it sort of coming out? I sort of get the sense that there was foundations laid, but suddenly there was a tipping point, and then the country just seems far more advanced digitally than certainly the UK.
Most of Europe.
Yeah, it's an interesting question about the takeoff point. You know, the old joke about overnight successes are never overnight, right? It's only overnight to people who don't see you sweat and work, and it often takes years, decades of work, and then go, oh my God, an overnight success. And you're like, oh, okay. You didn't watch me while I was sweating in the basement, right? And it is a little bit like that. When I first moved here in 2016, I was thinking about it, chatting about sitting in London with my wife saying, listen, we've had a good innings in London and we're still young enough to try something new. And the rationale of coming here, to be completely honest, was we weren't looking just at Dubai at that point. We'd done about 20 years of working life in London, and I was looking at so my sort of, if I have a kind of any special knowledge or métier, it's finance. And basically I was a financial analyst and then a fintech analyst and now an observer, advisor, investor in the space. And I was thinking, where's the exciting things happening in the world? In the mid-90s, when we left college, London was like the place to be. I don't want to glorify the Tony Blair years. It's not about politics, but the Tony Blair years.
Full of energy.
Full of energy. London was buzzing. And for the kids out there who don't remember that, and just think of the Iraq War or whatever, there was a domestic scene in London that was like
yeah, I
cool
mean,
and
London was
buzzing.
the center of the cultural universe in many
It was
ways.
the financial capital of Europe. There was a thing called Europe that we became part of. I remember when I joined the city, there were UK teams and European teams. In 97, I worked on these building society IPOs. That was the UK team. In 98, they said, we want to send you to the Europe team. It's a cycle of life. We've gone back to UK and Europe. But it was about 2000 we merged the teams, I think. Or was it 99, 2000? There used to be a UK research team and a European research team. We merged it around year 2000 and said, we're going to be Europe. London became... I used to meet young people from Italy, Finland, obviously France. London was full of French people back then. Still is to an extent, but not as much. And everyone came to London. Americans came to London, and they would go, oh, it's so small and it's so old. But they came to London. Now I go to America and go, oh, it's so old and so... So I love it when I go from Dubai to New York, and because I just replay back what all my American friends used to say to me for years when they would come to London. Oh, it's so expensive and it's so old. And now it's like I get to use the same lines back at them, because Dubai is like how Americans saw the UK and Europe in the 90s and the 2000s. I think Americans and Brits and Europeans come to Dubai and it's like that. They're like, oh my God, this is like America used to be. It's full of energy. It's building the future. It's not about litigating the past. It's not about making something great again. It's not about we're going back to some golden age. This is about we're building the golden age. Now in 2015, 2016, we had a choice. We looked at Hong Kong, Singapore, and here. For a variety of reasons, the Venn diagram crossed over to Dubai. It had elements of Hong Kong, Singapore. It wasn't as developed. In fact, people were pushing me to go to Hong Kong. Some were saying go to Singapore. And when I chose Dubai, not a small number of people said to me, are you retiring? No one said, oh, I get why you're doing it. I want to follow you. 4 years later, with COVID, it went from, are you retiring to, whoa, how do I do it? Now, listen, Dubai isn't the answer to everything, and the UAE isn't the answer to everything. If you're building a consumer fintech operation, for example, a B2C, the market here is small. I tell my North American friends, Dubai's population is a decent-sized North American town. It's like roughly a Toronto or a Seattle or something. It's not New York City, LA County size. This is small. LA County or New York metropolitan area, those are like Saudi Arabia. They're huge in terms of size. You're talking about trillion-dollar GDPs, double-digit millions of people. The economy here and the size of in Dubai, not the UAE, in Dubai, is like a decent, wealthy, not a number one, number two US city. Got to keep the size in context. Now, in 20 years' time or 15 years' time, this place is going to become much bigger, so you can be part of that growth. And that's what's exciting. That's the challenge of Europe right now. What's growing? And I'm not having a dig at Europe or Britain. I still love the UK, go back regularly, particularly in the summer. But what's new and growing? There was, and I write about in my book, 10, 15 years ago, Anne Boden was floating around and Tom Blomfeld and Nick Stronsky and others, and they were thinking about building the future, and amazing, they built it. And all the bankers went, bah, it'll never scale. And when it did scale, they were like, it'll never make money. And then when they became valued at 45 billion, they were like, whatever, it's overvalued, right? But it happened, right? London built that. But I think for me, that was like almost the tail end of that glorious, glorious period that started with the Blair years. And then that energy, because when did Nick Stronsky show up in London? In that era.
Yeah.
When was Tom Blomfeld? When did he kind of, in that era, we all grew up in that era, or they're a bit younger than us, but...
I mean, for me, my background's technology, and I'm a out-and-out geek.
Mm-hmm.
So I might be biased, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I cannot see how the US or the UK will compete in the future because of a lack of digital infrastructure in the country. If we look at the progress of Brazil, of India,
with UPI,
of China, and its government-led digital infrastructure, is my biased thought. I mean, what's your view here? Because they've also got the same digital infrastructure here.
Yeah. No, there's definitely been a leapfrogging in these countries. Now, I would not rule out the UK and the US yet. And I just quoted Churchill on stage downstairs because someone in the audience said, something along the lines that the Americans aren't doing what you just said, right? This digital infrastructure that the rest of the world has done. And when will the banks start serving the new economy properly? And you know that famous Churchill quote about the Americans always do the right thing, having tried all the other things first, right? I think he said it during WW2 when they were trying to get America into the war. Yeah, you better fact check it, guys. But America always does the right thing after trying all. And America is big enough that it can afford to do it. Any other economy, if they ran like America, they would fall behind. But America has so many natural talents. And it's so easy for, particularly us sitting here in Dubai or in Singapore or in Europe, go, the American century is over. Guys, what happened to the Asian century? I was told for the last, God knows how many decades, there was going to be the Asian century. It's neither the American century nor the Asian century. It's a kaleidoscopic world. It's a multicolored world. And it's super interesting. We're going back to a world where there's no one dominant pole. Financially, America still remains dominant. And that doesn't go away. Just to give you some stats, about 90% of one leg of every foreign exchange transaction is done in dollars. The dollar is everyone's second currency. And that doesn't go away. And there's something, and it's worth reflecting on, about the dollar and English. What do they have in common? I mean, I grew up in the UK, but my family originally from Bengal. In the Hindu part, or largely Hindu part, is now in India. The Muslim part became Bangladesh, its own country. Bangladesh literally means the country of Bengalis, or Bangladesh. There are 300 million people who speak Bengali as their first language. That's almost as many people who speak English in America. Actually, it's about the same. It's about the same, because if you think of the native Spanish speakers in America, okay? So if you think about native English speakers, how many are there in the world? Maybe 400, 500 million, like first language. America, Britain, and Australia. But that's not that much more than Bengali speakers. No one speaks Bengali, or very few people speak Bengali as a second language, except for a random Japanese guy I once met in Hiroshima. That's another story for another day. I did meet this Japanese gentleman many years ago who spoke perfect Bengali in the suburbs of Hiroshima, which was like mind-blowing. But no, apart from him, no one speaks Bengali as a second language. Why? There are so many Bengali speakers their first language. So this goes back to currencies. The dollar is everyone's second currency. It's like when a Bengali is in Sicily admiring the Baroque churches in Noto and is speaking to the Italian waiter or a French person or a Greek person or a Chinese person, they're talking in English in that cafe in Noto, Sicily. Why? It's everyone's second language. The dollar is the same. It's open. It's large. And you can do so many things with it. And that doesn't disappear. And the dollar will remain really important for the next probably 5, 7, 10 years. The question is, what does it look like in 30 years? In 2050, what does it look like? So don't count America out. And then don't forget your amazing universities. 2 of my kids, well, one is already studying at university in the UK. Second one's applying. He's going to go to the UK most likely, not guaranteed. The UK and the US has amazing academia, universities, culture. There's a role for that. There's a really important role for that. And that plays into innovation.
I totally agree with you. I mean, we Brits are very good at bashing our own country.
Be more French.
Yeah.
Talk yourselves up. Talk your national assets up. If the French had the universities England has, oh my God, Macron would be shouting this from every rooftop. Not just talking about Emily in Paris.
Yes. But I think this is why actually coming and visiting places like Dubai is so important, because you remember the energy. Actually, energy, excitement. Those are the fuels that kind of really drive the next sort of... And there's no reason why we can't recapture all of that. You're right. There are so many strengths. I was sort of looking at a map, actually, of hurricanes. Like, there is a map that somebody...
You don't get hurricanes in the UK. Is that where you're going with this?
Pretty much, yeah. So, we are a country which doesn't get huge events happening to us, and that has an impact. So, anyway, look, let's kind of park hurricanes for the moment.
Or typhoons.
Let's switch gear. We've sort of only got a few minutes left to talk about your book.
We're going to talk about the book. Come on.
No, so picking up on that comment about the dollar, I mean, you've written a book called The Future of Money.
Yes.
And I guess one argument that could be made is that actually the future of money could be crypto, and the future that may compete with the dollar is Bitcoin or some other coin that's kind of out.
Perhaps. Yes.
Well, look, I'm just trying to get us on to talking about your book.
Sure. No, talk about it.
So,
absolutely.
Is it actually about the technology? Or...
What is the book about? It's a really good question. What is the book about?
Why did you write it?
Why did I write it? You know why I wrote it? Someone asked me if I could write a book. No, not if I could, like, can I physically write a book? It was no, they said, listen, the best way to get someone to do something is to flatter them, right? So a nice lady, editor of a publishing house, pinged me on, believe it or not, on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn got me the job. See, she pinged me on LinkedIn and I ignored her, thinking it was just a spam message. And then she pinged me again. So folks, always send that second message, send the second DM, send the second email, basically show up. And she did. And I replied, we met, and she said, you've been an analyst for 20 plus years. You write about finance. You followed finance. I think you'll be really good at writing a book about the future of money. And I said, okay, I'll do it. But I want to write about something that I don't write about in my previous day job as an investment bank analyst, which is I want to write about the crazy people. I want to write about the people who wake up and say, something isn't right about the world and I'm going to fix it. One of the stories in the book is about, it doesn't matter who it was, but I hope Sergio doesn't mind. I wrote about him, so he's not going to mind. So Sergio is a Spanish guy sitting in New York, date night, Manhattan, and Dateline early 2010s, meets a lovely Brazilian lady, Sylvia, and Sylvia's telling Sergio about how inefficient and expensive Brazilian banking is. And instead of like nodding and saying some platitudes and can we have a second date, please? And, what's your phone number or whatever? I guess he had her phone number by then. But he says, I'm going to fix it. I mean, there's one way to impress a girl, right? I'm going to fix your whole bloody country's banking system. And even if you do say that on your whatever date night out, you don't go actually do it, right? Sergio gets on a plane a few months later, goes to Brazil. He's never been to Brazil. Isn't that insane?
That's crazy.
He's a consultant in New York, a former investment banker from Madrid. He goes to Brazil. I've been to Brazil many times. I never thought I'm going to set up a bank in Brazil because you have to be a little bit crazy to do that. And it takes several years to get product market fit. Okay, spoiler alert. His company is called Creditas. It seems to be doing really well. And it works after a while. But his problem that he tries to fix, and not tries, he fixes, is he's one of these fintechs that emerged in Brazil about a decade ago. There are others like Nubank, of course, the biggest neobank in the world now, and one of the most impressive fintechs in the world. Those emerged about a decade ago because there was something missing And what was missing in Brazil and other countries around the world that I write about in the book was we live in the consumer internet age that started in the mid 1990s and accelerated in the 2000s. And I'm holding up my phone because this is audio, not video. We live in this age, the mobile phone consumer internet age. The existing financial institutions were built often, if they're in countries like the one I'm living in now, the UAE, in the mainframe age, i.e. the 60s and 70s, or they were built in the 1800s. Most European banks are set up in the 1800s. They were built in the age of industrialization, urbanization, a completely pre-digital age. A lot of bankers, and I cringe when they say that, say, we're a technology company. And I'm like, yeah, we use a lot of old technology. Yeah. That doesn't make us a technology company. Sure, we have the world's biggest technology budgets. And that means for IBM or even Google, we were like one of their biggest clients of the banking industry, right? I mean, JP Morgan spends how much? $15 billion a year on tech. So yes, we spend a lot of money on tech. But most of what we spend is on running the bank tech. And a lot of the stuff we run the bank on, and of course everyone listening to your podcast knows this, is it's not digital, let alone the next generation of tech. And the book is all about these crazy founders in the last 10 years who go, something is broken and I want to fix it. And that's chapters 2 to about 6, 7 of the book. And the last 3 chapters of the book are about different themes. So one theme is tokenization and crypto and digital assets. That's the polite word in banking circles for crypto because you can't use the C word. So you say digital assets. Don't use the C word. Don't use the C word. No, digital assets. Virtual assets. Virtual assets. And then we talk about as well AI. Actually, have we not mentioned AI in this whole conversation?
Oh, we
How
were
many
timing
minutes?
it.
Oh my word.
24 minutes.
Oh my
minutes.
word. That's really good. I can't believe I did 24 minutes without mentioning AI. Actually, how do you know this is a real conversation? How do you know I'm not an avatar?
We're all in the Matrix anyway, so irrelevant.
You've just gone meta on me.
I feel like I should throw my glass of water over you
Just to see if I glitch.
I mean, we did see some pretty incredible things at GITEX yesterday, which
Did you see flying cars? I'm still waiting for those flying cars that I was promised.
2027.
Flying cars.
We've
Excellent.
heard it from the head of the Dubai Future Labs himself.
We're going to have flying taxis. Can you imagine the accidents on Sheikh Zayed Road? We have flying taxis. Oh, my God. And the traffic jams. We're going to have traffic jams at multi-level. But that's what the book is about. The end of the book is about what is the future going to look like. And so crypto, Bitcoin, the future, who knows? I use the analogy of the railway boom. If any of you listening from London or live in London, if you're like me and you go around the Circle Line, at some point you'll have observed that there is a ridiculous number of stations, mainline train stations next to each other. And there's a massive gap. And there's another kind of bunch of stations next to each other. Like, why are Victoria Station and Waterloo so close together? And more importantly, why are Euston, St. Pancras and King's Cross like literally on top of each other? Doesn't make any sense, right? Until you remember that in the 1830s, 40s, they were all private sector companies. They were the crypto bros of their day. The railway guys. They were and guess what? Most railway companies went to zero. There are 2 million crypto coins out there. Most of them will probably go to zero. So caveat emptor, buyer beware. I do believe, and I write in the book, that technology of tokenization and some cryptocurrencies will play a role. I'm not going to try to predict it because that's not my job here on this podcast to try to predict which one will be going up or down. Beyond saying that there's a difference between the railway technology being valuable, which it is, started in England, then went to places like France, Belgium, Argentina, went around the world, railways. And now we've got almost 200 years of railways. Blockchain, tokenization will be like that. But it's like railways came, and then what happened? Gosh, almost 60, 70 years after the railways, someone said, do I need a horse and cart? Or shall I replace the horse with a combustion engine? Another innovation came. Then the roads that used to be built for horses and carts, basically roads in London in the 1880s or anywhere in the world, New York City, were basically full of what? Shit. Yeah. Yes. Manure. It would have been filthy. And there was no M1 or M4 or pick whatever motorway works. And those motorways are built, in the 50s, 60s, the highways in the US are built. Those were very different roads to the 1880s, 1890s. Now, what am I whittering on about? For me, the roads are the banking system. So just like the roads in the 1880s and the 1890s are full of horse manure, and then they became highways, autobahns, motorways, banking system is doing something similar right now. We've gone from most international payments taking days to most wholesale, like big ticket international payments go in an hour. Now you could say, why is it an hour? Why not a second? But cross-border, an hour, not bad. Most international payments get settled within a day. Now you could say it should be an hour. It's dramatically different to domestically. 70 plus countries have real-time payments. That means it's instant. Even the 2000s, you had to
Sending
pay money.
to days.
Yeah. And if you wanted to do it real time, you had to go into a branch and do a CHAPS transfer and pay 30 quid to get a special transfer, right? That's what I did with my first mortgage. I'm dating myself again, but I had to pay 30 quid to NatWest to move the money from my current account to Halifax, my first mortgage lender. I'm like, what? Like today, if someone said that, I have to pay £30 to do real-time payments, you go like, oh, what? Like, can I split my payment real time in 10 different ways on my magic card? It's like, So we have come a long way. We'll carry on evolving. And I think just like the railways came and we built that, blockchain will be like the railways. The roads will get better. And then we'll get flying cars at some point, right? 2027. So watch the space.
So do you think the new infrastructure for payments is that, I'm just going off the back of your book, is Web3? Is that where you're hinting at?
Nah, it's going to be one rail. It's going to be one rail blockchain. Web3 is sort of a marketing concept or a business model idea of decentralization. I think that's super important. I think there is a reason why everyone says cash is dead. There have never been more, like say India, amazing revolution in the use of digital at point of sale. India's gone from being primarily cash 7 years ago at point of sale to being in big cities primarily digital. Amazing revolution. Do you know there are 2 times more banknotes by value in India today than before demonetization? The famous government demonetization where they pulled some of the big value in 2016 notes out of the system. There are 2 times. You're like, how did that happen? They're not being used for transactions at point of sale. They're being kept under mattresses, metaphorical mattresses. Why does India have allegedly, or Indian women, 1/10 of the world's gold in their safe deposit box around their necks? Why? Because apart from it looks good, some people would say it is a way to store value. That's yours. You self-custody. You know, Bitcoin bros go on about self-custody. Well, Indian women have been self-custodying wealth for bloody millennia. Not millennia, maybe, yeah. And that is, we have a human desire to, not because we're trying to cheat anyone. It's not just to, evade taxes or the government or sanctions. We want to keep our wealth to ourselves. Why does the government or someone else need to know what is ours? And crypto is the answer for the digital world. I'm saying you have to buy Bitcoin or this coin or that coin. It's one answer to having uniqueness and scarcity and privacy in a digital world. And that's why I think it's got a role. But it's not, maybe I need to be more fundamentalist about this, but I can't believe in just one thing. Yeah. So I think, yes, the banking rails will continue. Yes, blockchain will be another rail around it. And the future is going to be kaleidoscopic, where there'll be different poles around the world, different hubs. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Singapore. Hong Kong isn't dying. Hong Kong's going to still remain very relevant. There'll be hubs all over the world. And I also still believe the UK and particularly the US are going to remain very important hubs. And it would be a bad prediction to predict the demise of the US, the dollar, anytime soon.
Look, there's so much more that we could cover, and I suspect we're going to have to reconvene at some point. And
should we do a sequel somewhere else in the world?
I think so. Maybe we could talk about AI then.
Amazing.
But in a way, I'm quite glad that we've made it through without talking about, because there's, AI is just one aspect of all of this. But listen, thank you so much for coming on the show. I do have to ask, because I do follow you on social media, and I think you're on it, A380. Is the A380 the best plane that's ever been built?
Oh, totally. And I'm sure my youngest son, Henry, would agree with me. We actually visited the Airbus factory in Toulouse this summer and spent some time in the museum next to the factory and the factory. Yes, folks, I did spend 3 days, 4 days in Toulouse.
I'm like, yeah, how could I make that happen?
And the A380 is just awesome. So my LinkedIn tagline is onboard A380. A lot of people think that I'm actually literally on board. I am actually on board a lot, but right now I'm not on board. And my Twitter handle is @Ronit A380. I did that sort of as a joke when I moved to Dubai, and I was flying a lot. But then I took it off, and I was sitting in Stockholm, and a Swedish startup founder who's now sold out to a big American company and is far too wealthy and important to talk to me anymore. You know who you are if you're listening to this. He's probably not listening to this, but he said to me, 8 years ago, why did you just take that off? I said, oh, it's a joke. And he goes, no, That's such a cool tagline. Put it back on. And he's a founder. He's a crazy guy. So I said, you know what? You're right. Why am I being bashful? I'm going to put it back on. So hence hashtag onboard A380.
Fantastic. And in terms of the book itself, I presume you can buy it on Amazon.
Oh, totally. You can get it on Amazon UK and Amazon UAE. It delivers very quickly in both the countries, largely because my wife keeps buying it and my friends. In other countries, it takes a bit longer because I have fewer friends in those countries. So if you're in Singapore or in Switzerland, it's going to take a long time to get to you. But if you buy more, Amazon will stock it.
Fantastic. On that note, thank you so much for joining us. We've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Dave and Dharm Demystify. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tune in next time as we take another topic and demystify it.